The recording is in progress and we are streaming live.
Good afternoon. What a blessed day. We have the sun, it's shining, and it's our day. We are South African Royal Princesses Network, and we bring you our first webinar for today, the 29th June 2021. This is in honor of Youth Month. So I'd just like to welcome everybody into the group. All the people that are streaming, you are welcome. I'll be the moderator for this session, and I welcome you all. I am going to start the program, and I'll give it to Princess Stella. But before I do that, I would like to introduce Princess Stella. She will also introduce everybody that will speak to us today. Thank you. Let me introduce Princess Stella. Princess Stella Sigcau II from the Mpondo Kingdom in the Eastern Cape, a diplomat by profession, having served South Africa in Thailand, Republic of Congo, and Botswana, has been involved in various projects that empower women and children whilst fighting GBV since 2006, including donation to schools in the Mpondo Kingdom. She also does skills development for women and women cooperatives, which include facilitating workshops on the child and women abuse with international NPOs. Like Impulse, for example, Impulsive from Switzerland under Lwandle Lobomvu projects. And she also does anti-child trafficking and anti-child pornography workshops and awareness programs. She also donates sanitary towels to schools, rural girls, and Mpondo. Oh, she also does the Mpondo Read Dance. And as I read in the internet, I saw that she was one of the founders of that. So congratulations on that, Princess Stella. She is the founder of the Mpondo Cultural Heritage Festival and founder of the Mpondo Read Dance, as well as the founding member of the South African Princess Network. So we want to thank you, Princess Stella, for making this possible for us with all the people that you founded South African Princess Network with. As I will continue, I'll give you the chance to do our opening remarks and the introduction of the panelists. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Princess Mahlangu. Greetings to the panelists and greetings to everyone who is here with us. All protocol observed. Just briefly, I would like to start by briefing on South African Royal Princess Network, who we are and what we're about. South African Royal Princess Network is an association of royal princesses from various parts of South Africa who are committed to playing a progressive role in uplifting their communities and making a difference to those communities, broader South Africa and the world at large. One of the areas we are focusing on is gender-based violence, as well as youth and women empowerment. There's been a spike of GBV that seeks to undermine our efforts to inspire and empower women and children, that seek to break our young men and boys, turning them to broken men. Case in point, there have been reports of disgraceful incidents, such as reported case in Emaklasibeni, where a grandfather raped his 12-year-old granddaughter. There's been a case of gang rape in KwaZulu-Natal, where a young child was raped and then offered money to bribe her for silence. And then there was a girl was trafficked for prostitution in Gauteng. So the incidences, they go on. And then there are cases of ukuthwala in KwaZulu-Natal, in KwaZulu-Natal, in the Mpondo Kingdom, and KwaBhaca. And ukuthwala custom has also been hijacked by criminal elements like trafficking, forced child marriages, and rape. Now the question is, are such cultural practices relevant? Do they still serve their purpose? There is also a challenge of security in the rural areas, where in most villages, there are no police stations or mobile police stations. As a result, some GV cases are not reported. Some victims are scared to speak because they're afraid of stigma, they're afraid of being judged. Some know they are perpetrators, some are family members, and some are members of the communities. Some of the victims, they end up with mental illnesses, including depression, substance abuse. Some become perpetrators of GBV. As princesses, it cannot be business as usual. We cannot keep silent. Hence our ongoing programs to create awareness and condemn GBV. This webinar is one of those initiatives. Since it's Youth Month, the discussions will focus on GBV in relation to youth and how it affects and impacts on youth, including child abuse, child trafficking, child prostitution, child labor, child marriages, ukuthwala rape. These will also be addressed at local, national, and global level. The speakers will also touch on cyber safety, bullying, issues around security, role of parents, which is very important, and challenges of GBV during the COVID era. So I'll start by introducing our moderator, Princess Ntombizodwa Mahlangu. Princess Ntombizodwa Mahlangu is the member of Ndzundza Mabhoko royal family in Mpumalanga. She's also one of the organizers of King Nyabela Day, which takes place annually in December in Mpumalanga. King Nyabela Day, they commemorate the king who played a very important role in colonial resistance, and it also promotes Ndebele culture. Princess Mahlangu is also involved in community work, working with SEIDET, a community organization that focus on improving the educational levels in her community, especially in maths and science subjects. She has worked with a number of students in her area. The first speaker is Princess Gaboilelwe Moroka of Barolong Boo Seleka. She's the member of the National House of Traditional Leaders of South Africa, serving as an executive. And she's also the founder of Princess Gabo Foundation that advocates for healthy reproductive care. She'll focus on child trafficking, child pornography, child labor, and child prostitution. We also have gender expert and activist, Professor Mzi Nduna. She's with the psychology department at Wits University. She's also an executive dean of health sciences at the University of Fort Hare. She'll focus on the psychological impact of GBV on children, the role of parents. She'll touch on cyber safety and bullying, and she'll also, cyber safety and bullying. The next speaker is Queen Madosini Ndamase. She'll focus on ukuthwala, sexual abuse of children, including rape and child marriages, in relation to rural and traditional societies. She'll address the issue of safe security in rural areas and how these impact on children. She also touched on GBV in relation to COVID-19. Her Majesty Queen Madosini is Queen of Mpondo Asenyandeni, and she's also the president of Imbumba Yamakoskazi Akumkulu. We also have Dr. Criselda Kananda. She's not new in our public space. She's a radio and TV personality. She's also a gender and HIV/AIDS activist. She's also an ambassador to Orange Babies International Trustee, South African Women in Dialogue 2016, and Food Gardens Foundation. She'll tackle GBV on youth from a national perspective. We also have our former Secretary General of Indian Ocean Rim Association, IORA, Ambassador Dr. Ntombizodwa. She will address GBV on youth from a global perspective. She's our former High Commissioner to Mauritius and former Consul General in Milan. She's also a doctor by profession. We also have the CEO of Freedom Park, Ms. Jane Mufamadi, who reflect on GBV and youth activism and the role of Freedom Park in combating GBV. Our final speaker is Nkosi Phathekile Holomisa, osikhahlelo sakhe singuDlizi Ntaba Umgebe. He's the current Deputy Minister of Justice and Correctional Services. He is the traditional head of AHIABGA in the Tembu Kingdom in the Eastern Cape. He's also the former Deputy Minister of Labor, who served as a Member of Parliament for over 25 years, chairing various portfolios. He's also the founding member of Contralesa and its former president. He will address the issue of GBV from the perspective of traditional leadership, and will also touch on the role of government. Doing the closing remarks and charting the way forward is Princess Tshepi Motlowing of the Royal Batlokwa Nation. She's the founder of Future Lift Foundation, a non-profit company that focuses on business management skills, training, and mentorship for women and youth in rural areas. She's also the Goodwill Ambassador of the 5-Point Youth Foundation that focus on self-empowerment of youth, women, and adults. Thank you.
Thank you, Princess Stella. That was well articulated, and I am sure that our listeners are waiting to hear from all our panelists. I will not take time. What I'll do is I'll start with our first panelist. As you said, I'll hand it over to Her Royal Highness, Princess Gabo Moroka. Thank you very much. Princess Gabo.
Thank you very much, Your Royal Highness, Princess Mahlangu. Thank you to Princess Stella, Your Majesties, Royal Highnesses, Excellencies, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. An African proverb says it takes a village to raise a child. And this is how we grew up, knowing that each home is a home, playing freely in the streets, in the fields, within our villages, without any fear. Communities gave protection. Today, we live as if we're encaged. We don't trust our own family members, neighbors, and the general environment that we are supposed to feel safe around. It is truly, is this truly how life is supposed to be? We find our children so broken, mind, body, and soul. Our nation's suicide rate is skyrocketing, especially amongst children. Substance abuse is also of grave concern, and GBV is one of the root causes of these actions. Child marriages, we say not in the name of culture. Child trafficking, including, for example, children taken from villages through false pretense to cities in search of better opportunities. Child pornography, social media being the biggest culprit. Child pornography, this is destroying a child's life, a child's future before it even begins. Child labor, usually because of circumstances our children find themselves in within their nucleus, ending up with them having to seek for work for survival. And ukuthwala, a practice, a cultural practice that is now practiced wrongfully and then classified as culture. We cannot begin to justify any of it. The South African Constitution defines children as persons under the age of 18. Our Constitution also, in Section 28 of the Bill of Rights, states that every child has the right to basic nutrition, shelter, healthcare, and social services, as well as the right to be protected from maltreatment, neglect, abuse, and degradation. Children's rights is also one of the 7 focus areas identified by the South African Human Rights Commission to effectively fulfill its mandate of promoting, protecting, and monitoring the realization of rights of children in South Africa. We also have the African Charter on the rights and welfare of the child. And our country is also part of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. This is an important agreement by countries who have promised to protect children's rights. However, even though we as a country have tried to initiate different forms of intervention, we seem to be grappling with the battle of successfully combating the scourge of gender-based violence. The University of Johannesburg reports that trafficking occurs at a slightly higher rate for girls than boys, with 55.5% of all people being female and 44.5% being male. It is estimated that more than 3/4 of all victims are between the ages of 12 and 25. In 2014, almost a decade ago, the Human Rights Council called for a resolution on child marriages. There was a commitment of ending child marriage by the end of 2020, which is a year ago, under the ministerial commitment on comprehensive sexuality education and sexual and reproductive health services in the Eastern and Southern Africa. This Youth Month, we focus on our children, our future. Our effort will be based on the critical need for all of us to take positive action. We, the South African Royal Princesses Network, have committed to joining the fight against gender-based violence. We are making the effort in taking action and taking a firm stand to address this injustice. We are taking action to contribute to this war using our social standing, not just within the communities we lead, but within the entire nation, continent, and the global village. Yes, COVID-19 has worsened the scourge. Our unemployment rate is at its highest, nearly at 40%. Substance abuse, hunger, poverty, all worsen this challenge we face. And of course, as the world is faced with this pandemic, resources and priorities of nations are affected, South Africa not being immune. And this is the reality that we face. This therefore means we must come up with practical solutions that leave no one behind. Children, parents, schools, churches, traditional leadership, civil society, government must all sing from the same hymn book. In closing, Royal Princesses of South Africa have come together. We come as a collective voice to say enough is enough. We come saying we are committing to be the voice of the voiceless. We will be the change that we want to see within our nation. How we all hope and pray for a free, caring, loving, and safe society. This says we must invest in prevention, and finding lifelong sustainable solutions. We acknowledge our nation is already burdened with many challenges. Ours is then to advocate in rebuilding our society, rebuilding the moral fiber of our nation, building strong family units, strong values, and a strong foundation. It is a mammoth task that needs dedication and commitment. And we advocate also for legislative reform. Otherwise, we will still continue on this very same path. This that we are standing for is the right of human dignity, and most importantly, the value of dignity, which we so all deserve. We are under compulsion to take a firm stand, as gender-based violence has a lifelong effect on each and every one of us. We most certainly cannot allow it to be in the name of culture, tradition, religion, or in any form or shape. us as princesses, royal princesses, coming from a cultural and traditional background, we definitely say not in the name of culture and not in the name of tradition. As we forge ahead to try and contribute positively to this fight, all we can say is Morena, boloka setjhaba sa rona, Nkosi sikeleli Africa. I thank you.
Moderator, back over to you.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Princess Gabo. You said a mouthful, and we are indeed blessed to have somebody like you in terms of having a woman in a structure like the National House of Traditional Leaders. I would like to say that I have been reading about GBV. And on the 29th of April, 2021, in an article on from IOL, which was titled, South Africa is notorious for its high levels of gender-based violence. In one of the paragraphs, it states, South Africa is a country that is notorious for its high levels of gender-based violence. The SEPS that stats for the reported rape cases for 2019-2020 is for 2,289, and for the sexual assaults, 7,749. And this does not include all those cases that are not reported. So this is a good work that we are doing. I would like to take us to Ndlungu, Her Royal Majesty Queen Madosini Ndamase. Mama, siyakuhlonipha. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greeting to the panelists at large. Mine is very short. I'm representing the traditional sphere under Imbumba Yamakoska's Agumkulu. I have been given topics and topics and topics, but when you are given the topic, ukuthwala is a topic that covers all the aspects of abuse within our communities. You've got rape there, you've got child marriages there, you've got child abuse. I will start by saying that when you talk of a traditional sphere, you know, when I talk about this topic, I become so emotional. When you talk of a traditional sphere, I always refer to it as the home of gender-based violence due to its patriarchal relations of power. You know how they do it. You've got these norms, values, and laws in the traditional in the traditional sphere itself that have been orchestrated or have been designed to oppress, ukuxinezela umuntu ongumama nomntana, particular young girls. So it begins from there, it emanates from there. So hence I'm saying that it's so touching and so painful in our rural communities, because even though the traditional sphere itself is an institution, but it has got norms that are there for ukucinezela abantu abangomama nabantwana. I'll take, let's talk about ukuthwala. Ukuthwala itself, you know, in the olden days, ukuthwala was practiced by a couple in love. You know, they want to get married, but maybe the guy's parents do not afford, they don't have cows, or they feel like they are out of time. So they will, you know, they'll hook up each other to go fetch water, knowing very well, but this is the day that my partner will come and smuggle me in a way and take me to his home. And then automatically, they are a couple, they are the parents or the families are bound to pay ilobola. It used to be a fun thing to do. The parents will agree with the kids, or rather the two families will meet and agree. But now what we see in our days is rather very painful, because it has been, ukuthwala has guys now, rather disguised or guys under the customary law itself. You will find, in fact, it has been used as a way of child trafficking. But child trafficking, but when you take it into simple and modern terms, it is we refer to it as child trafficking, selling young girls for sex. Umdana will be coming back from school and they never reach home. And it often happens to those kids that are orphans, you know, those kids that don't have parents and have been adopted, you know. It happens to areas where there's poverty, because uncle feels like they need cow at home, they need cows at home, they need means to an end, you know. So they've got this young girl here that they can negotiate her out to some other men, you know. Now you can't call that ukuthwala. It's a criminal act, you know. We've got a case recently in the Mpondo, because most ukuthwala you find a KZN, say Eastern Cape, particular in the Mpondo region. There's currently a case whereby a man goes and pays 500 rands to a mother of a girl. I think it's an aunt. The girl has got no parents. It's an aunt. He pays 500 rand. He abducted that girl while she was from school, you know. Luckily, he got arrested. But when you get to the bottom of the story, the mother is taking 500 rands every month from this man who sleeps with this 16-year-old girl. The man is as old, I think he's about 56 years old. So you've got such cases that happen, and the chief in that particular area happens to know about the case, you know. And another mistake that that happens within our traditional sphere is to think that we can discuss things the traditional way, you know. And when you come and intervene as a mother, as an aunt, you are told that move back, you know. So we are still victims of that. And unfortunately, when you raise your voice, such things as women's rights, children's rights, and all sorts of, you know, rights in some of our traditional communities, they've got no space. Nobody's willing to give them a chance, you know, especially when it comes to women. So the actual problem that egubungele indawo zethu zesintu is what I've referred to as patriarchal relations of power. Umama, a woman, doesn't have a voice. Even now, in this 21st century, women do not have a voice. And it is unfortunate that, you know, the consequences, zokuthwala, they leave a lot to that young girl. They leave a lot to that family, to that woman, you know, like emotionally. The actual rights, when you take a child out of school, you are taking their rights to education. You know, you are hindering themselves from the actual development. Remember, psychologically, you have to go through all your developmental stages. So when you're being deprived of a certain stage that you have to go through, you have to play with other girls, you have to go through all classes of development, all levels of development. When you are being deprived that certain stage, you will go through what we call regression. I think so. where you will, at a certain stage, you will go back to that stage again. Sithi umntana ugila imikhuba kanti umntana wadepriva istage zangangene kuso ngokwaneleyo. There is a lot, but I'm sure there is a speaker who's going to talk on that. There is a lot that comes with ukuthwala. We are raising an angry society because of this. You know, people don't want to forgive because of this. You know, umntana akhule nomsindo. And then she will give birth to angry kids because they are a product of rape. It fits in here because where there's ukuthwala, there's rape. And then will force her to have sex with him. Now, how does ukuthwala no rape kuhlangana kanjani? You know what happens? There is this myth that when you are HIV positive, you sleep with a girl, a virgin girl, you are automatically cured or healed. I don't know where it came from. So that still dominates our communities at large. That if you're a man and you are HIV positive and you happen to sleep with a girl, with a young girl, you are cleansed or you automatically becomes HIV negative. So there is that thing. So it emanates from there itself. Which means that there is a lack of knowledge, you know, in as much as there is a lack of knowledge as well, there is a lack of support, you know, because okay, you don't want to put a blame on the government. But we have got a government that holds the budget. We are NGOs, we are NPOs within our communities that have got the voice but don't have the resources, unfortunately, or the budget. But we exist automatically under the Department of Women, if I can single it out. But I can never tell you where the Department of Women is for our poor people. Remember, abantu bethu are meant to be under a government, are meant to be secured under the budget and the sector departments that have to bring in awareness to them in their communities. So we try our best, but these sector departments that are supposed to be nearer to us, nearer to our people, to bring in information, to bring in resources, we have a gap. Ndiyakhala kakhulu nge-Department of Women. It's not there. All I know is in Cape Town or in Joburg, but I've never seen it in East London. I've never seen it in Mthatha, Libote, Bizana, anywhere. I don't even know how are they branded. But all I know is that when you count departments, the Department of Women exists within our government structure. Youth departments and organizations, yes, they are there. But you've never seen a gazebo that says, today we are here in this rural area. We are here to talk to GBV issues. We are here to talk to things that affect, you know, about abantwana and women, you know, it's so sad that when you gather these women, we often do that as in Bumbaya Makoskaza Gomkul. We have decided to have these small dialogues and gatherings. You know, men in rural areas do not understand that as much as I'm married to you, when I say no today, I don't want to engage. I don't want to have sex today. I don't feel like making love. So yeah, Joel, you know, you've got issues. They don't understand that you've got a right to say no. A right to say no doesn't exist in our rural communities. No, they do not know that. So we need to do more than the talking. We need to practically engage this issue. But as now as the resources net budget, but we do have relevant departments and institutions to attend to these cases. So we can be here, we can talk, change the terms, change the terminology, change the outfits. But if the people that are meant to carry out duties and support like NGOs, NPOs, to go and make sure that these rights are well known and sustainable in particular in our impoverished communities, if those relevant institutions do not come forth, then nangomso sobe silapha sithetha le nto iyi-1, because we can talk sifundile sonke, we are well educated here and well informed, but who carries the actual resources to make sure that these things are done? If kufuneka kubanjwe umuntu, why are they out on bail? Why are they given equal rights as me being the victim? You know, so the system is failing us. You know, as I've put it, we can say and talk and say anything, but it all comes down to who holds 100% or most resources to make sure that what we are here for is carried out and is assisted mostly in these areas. I'm very emotional in the topic because who are vulnerable, whom at this point are depending on me, on what I am saying here, that will rescue them, that will take them out of that environment that is hindering them to ukukhula, you know, just personal growth. Recently, I addressed the GBV program and some other, I can't remember what it was, but my point was, you can bring in a project, you can bring in whatever kind of project, but if someone who has been raped, someone who has been abused, who has experienced all sorts of abuse, your project is as good as nothing because it will not serve their purpose, you know. So you've got to deal with the individual in context so that what you are bringing into the community can be sustainable. Abantu bashiyeke bephilile. What we have tried as Imbumbo Yamakoskaza Komkhulu in 2019 was to do a national boys assembly together with the Department of Child Development. It was a well-attended program. We had about plus minus 4,000 boys, you know, just to hear them out, their understanding of GBV. It was shocking. The things that they told us, let alone those young men telling us that you have neglected us. You have made the community to think that it's all about girls. I don't even know what is the role of a father. I don't even know the role of a young man, the difference between a boy and a young man. So that's when we said, no, there's a lot that we need to do. We have to shift focus. So just before the hard lockdown 2020, we were organizing a girls' assembly, but unfortunately we had hard lockdown in 2020. So, but recently we've had small dialogues with women, no mama, trying to understand exactly in their own terminology and language in this 21st century, what do they feel can be a solution? You know, what is their understanding, you know, of this GBV and femicide? Where does it emanate from? What is their understanding of speaking out? The campaign that we're launching was Say It, Yisho campaign, speak out, Teta, so that we know exactly where to intervene. Even if we want these sector departments or the relevant organization to intervene, we must drive them towards what you think is relevant in you. And also, just before now, we hit the third wave of COVID-19 because we had discovered that during COVID, it was a period because you know, so we are suffocating each other. That's when we saw a rise in gender-based violence, rape. So we're organizing just now a dialogue between girls and boys and parents. Just so that we get exactly the gist of the matter and also to get the possible solutions to the issue of GBV at large. As I have said that I like this topic. All forms of GBV because they exist under that concept. By a man to a woman, from a man to a woman to a society at large. My hope is that with this webinar, someone out there will come forth into assisting us, or I don't want to say helping us, assisting us, especially the traditional institutions like the House of Traditional Leaders. They have a role to play. We have got a situation here. The patriarchy is still there. The patriarchal relations of power in our rural areas and in the traditional institutions. You know, we have to undo those laws, those norms that oppress omama. We have to unlock that thing. Ihambe isuke, but ifuneka isuke pha enhloko kulaa ndawo ekuthiwa kumangalwa kuyo, which is the traditional councils. Iqale pha, so that women can be protected. But for as long as within our traditional institutions, we have got no voices to take charge and say that, Zingosi, can you make adjustments in certain laws and values? For instance, ukuthwala, if I were to sum it up, ukuthwala is that thing cannot be justified anymore, because it has been used as a criminal way of raping a child, of abducting a child, of stealing, like the child, the woman's dignity itself. It's going against our constitution, even against children's rights. A lot is carried under that term, ukuthwala. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mama. I can really see that this is a very emotional factor to you, and we have learned a lot. I think I would like to take out the fact that you have included men in educating them about ukuthwala. So I wish that the lockdown would actually, I just wish that COVID would come to an end so that all the projects that you've organized will then go through. Without wasting any time, I'd like to thank everybody that has come in, and I am seeing the messages, and we thank you so much for coming through into the link. And I'll go to our third panelist now. Our third panelist is Professor Mzi Nduna. Professor, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Program Director. The Royal Princess Network as a leadership is concerned predominantly with matters of rural development. Whilst that is the case, and as Madosini has already explained to us the challenges that are faced by the rural communities, there is an unawareness amongst the movement that there are tensions in how we sometimes construct and construe of gender-based violence, femicide, and child abuse. But despite this, it gives us pleasure to know that we are working together to realize the National Strategic Plan for Gender-Based Violence, which was released by the President in 2020. Pillar 1 of the National Strategic Plan for Gender-Based Violence encourages multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder involvement in the coordination of gender-based violence. And it is in this regard that I really thank the South African Royal Princesses Network for coordinating a webinar like this and other activities. I follow their activities also on social media, and I do know that they are playing their part. And thank you so much to all of the members of the network and the coordinators. And this webinar is also a contribution to the realization of Pillar 2 of the National Strategic Plan, which clearly communicates the state's commitment to preventing violence before it happens. One of the ways to prevent gender-based violence and femicide before it happens is to address child abuse, and that is what we are about this afternoon. Child abuse and adversity. A number of scientific studies prove that child abuse and adversity, these experiences actually precede both violence perpetration and victimization. By that, we mean that all children who have been exposed early in life to violence and adversity are at risk of becoming perpetrators of violence, but they are also at risk of becoming victims of violence. Children are at risk of violence, and particularly gender-based violence and femicide even before they are born. I am not going to touch on violence that is experienced by women during pregnancy. That is a conversation for another day. What I would like to highlight this afternoon, because we are talking about child abuse and adversity, is actually the unlawful and intentional killing of a female by a system. Now, I need you to note that this afternoon, I am saying by a system. I'm saying this because the job of killing a female person in this country as elsewhere can be done by the hands of a man, and we call that femicide, when a man kills a woman because she is a woman for a number of reasons. But also, that is not the only way we kill women. Our actions and inactions, especially the actions and inactions of the state, as highlighted as well just now by Ndamase, are also killing women every day. And we call that structural violence or social injustice. But also as a society, we contribute to this through what I call the devaluing of female offspring in favor of a male offspring. This is very common in patrilineal and patriarchal societies. So patrilineal societies being those where the boy carries the name of the family. So intergenerational carrying of the surname, that's the patrilineal from the father's side. So this is very common because the boy, especially where a boy is born within or by married parents, they are expected to be the heir, and they are afforded the honor because they are a male. Now, you could argue that we actually live in a modern and democratic society. People sometimes throw this statement at us that we are democratic, but we need to understand that democracy does not change our entrenched social values. It does not come close to doing that. In fact, that is not what it was meant. So in this modern society that South Africa is, and with our commitments to gender equality and an ideal destination, we may fall trap into thinking that sex-selective pregnancies are not an issue. And yet, when we plant an idea in the mind of an expectant couple, especially where marriage is at stake, that should they give birth to a boy, bazakube benze kahle, bazakube bazibulile, basiphe indodana, basiphe inkulu. All those expectations that we plant in the minds of an expecting couple actually set in motion a series of expectation. Chief among these expectations is greatness. So there is an expectation of greatness that is set in motion. And this then is accompanied by a system of support around the child so that he is protected, he is safe, he is successful, he is respectable, he is dignified. And when you have not declared greatness on the girl child, what that means is the opposite is actually what we allow to happen to girls and young women. Child abuse is constructed as actions or failures to act, and this may cause injury, emotional harm, risk serious harm, and even death. So an absence of the expectations of greatness on its own is a foundation for adversity for girls. The society's indifference and lesser enthusiasm in terms of their expectations of a girl suggests that we will not rally behind her for safety, for success, for respect, for dignity, and all the things that we rally behind a boy for. And as a result of this, we also see challenges with children, such as child labor, as already mentioned, and child labor being the exploitation of children through any form of work that deprives the child of their childhood. So child labor is not asking children to do chores in your house, but if children are expected to go and work and they're not able to enjoy their childhood, then that is child labor. It also happens to the extent that it interferes with the ability of the child to attend school. So when we take them to be cattle herders, when we take them as house help in our houses, and we know that they are still young and they should be going to school, then there is a problem there. Also, when we do not return girls to school immediately after pregnancy and childbirth, we are actually contributing to child labor because we are sending them to join the world of work very early on in life. And in this world of work, this is where women are underemployed and mainly employed in precarious jobs. We are setting them up for sex work. As minors in the sex work industry, they are at risk of child prostitution, which is defined as an involvement in commercial sexual exploitation. This child prostitution could be in exchange of gifts, food, clothes, drugs, or job opportunities. Now, the challenge with South Africa is that we do not have a law against sexual harassment, or what I call a tit for tat, or what other people call the boardroom sexual liaisons. And these are not criminalized in South Africa, but they are dealt with through employer human resources policy. And not all employers have these policies that will curb sexual harassment, tit for tat, or boardroom liaisons in the workplace. And so many people actually avail themselves for these situations. And we find people who hold power and have access to opportunities, that they actually avail these opportunities and positions in return for sexual favors in these companies. And because not all companies have responsibilities for putting in place, the responsibility is there, but they don't actually take that responsibility seriously for putting in place human resources policies to deal with this. These kind of men or perpetrators of tit for tat harassment actually overstay in these companies and actually rise to leadership positions. Now, these early experiences for girls and young women undermine bodily integrity. Girls and young women's bodily integrity is deemed unworthy and can be violated at no consequence for the perpetrators. We see this a lot in non-consensual pornography and disproportionate negative consequences that non-consensual pornography has for girls and women. Consent is a very important area of intervention for the Royal Princess Network, because violent consumption of women's bodies happens in various ways. Child marriages, as just mentioned, is one of the ways in which women's bodies are actually violated through a guise of an institutionalized tradition or culture. So child marriages and ukuthwala are actually the forms of institutionalized access to non-consensual sex. I describe these examples as institutionalized because in South Africa, I know that Olomisa is in this panel, and maybe he will touch on the law a bit, but I just want to point this out, that in South Africa, actually, our law considers marriage of a minor, a child who is below the age of 18. So anyone who is 16 can be married, and that is considered legal. That is actually against our own commitments that we have made in terms of being signatories to regional instruments such as the Maputo Protocol, which clearly states that no child under the age of 18 should be married. But in South Africa, a child under the age of 18 can be married legally so. And also things like tradition and culture sometimes permit a man's choice to take a wife under the age of 18, and still this continues despite the presence of traditional structures that should monitor and sanction any practices that compromise women's ability to fully realize their potential. Now, the challenge that we have with eliminating these practices such as ukuthwala is that there is no law in South Africa against ukuthwala. Again, because Ngosi Olomisa is also the Deputy Minister for Justice and Constitutional Development, I am expecting that he will remember that we still do not have a law in this country against ukuthwala. So a perpetrator of that particular practice may get away if they did not forcibly handle the girl. Because if they forcibly handle the girl, then we can talk about abduction, and the court has to prove abduction. And they can also get away if they did not move the girl from one place to another. If they moved a girl from one town to another, then we can talk about trafficking, because there is a case against trafficking. But if they take this girl and keep them in the same village and do not handle them violently, then there is no case to prove, because there was no trafficking. Also, if the child is aged 16, even though they are still below the age of 18, then it's very difficult for these alleged perpetrators to be prosecuted because there is no statutory rape. So actually, as as we advocate for ukuthwala to be eliminated, we are advocating based on a series of legal instruments, but there is not one legal instrument in this country that says ukuthwala is against the law and describes what ukuthwala is. So the court will have to prove rape, and we know how disappointing we are as a country in convicting those who are accused of rape. So amongst the many things that the network is doing, I would like to see the Royal Princesses Network join the civil society in advocating for a law against ukuthwala, for the alignment of the marriage age with the Maputo Protocol, but also with our own legal definition of adulthood, which is 18 and above. And also a law against sexual harassment, because there is no law in this country against sexual harassment. We rely on labor policies. So in fact, it is not criminal to actually harass someone in this country. And also to advocate for a legal crime category for femicide, because again, we do not have a legal crime category for femicide. What we have in this country is murder, is homicide, but we do not have the killing of a female because they are a woman. And we know that that happens a lot. Femicide is widely described by researchers in this country, but we still don't have a law that specifically targets femicide. And lastly, I would like to invite the South African Royal Network to actually join hands with the civil society in addressing school dropout at the age of 10, because we need to reduce child labor. And one of the ways in which, at grade 10, one of the ways in which we can reduce child labor is to target young people. And we know that evidence in South Africa suggests that a lot of young people, both girls and boys, actually drop out from grade 10. So we need to make sure that we keep both girls and boys at school for longer so that we reduce child labor. Thank you very much, Madam Program Director, for the opportunity to say a few words with the panel this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Mzi. We thank you for everything that you have said. It's powerful. And before we continue, we are gladly, as South African Royal Princess Network, we gladly will work with you to make sure that all these topics are dealt with and we can move forward. It is very important. You spoke about femicide. I would just like to remind the world about Unene, who was killed at a post office. Those are some cases that were very sad cases, but I won't deal with them. It's just a reminder. I will move on to our next panelist, Dr. Criselda Kananda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and Ndlovukazi. I'll only open my video just for greetings and that you see that there is a human face behind the conversation or behind the words, and then I will close off my video because unfortunately network is really not the best when the video is on. And greetings to everyone, and all protocol I observe. I don't want to go ibhanga that I go ngamagumbi, I might end up ndihlawula, and I don't have any cows to hlawula. Thank you once again, and thank you for the opportunity. And you know, I would like to just begin by expressing my heartfelt gratitude to the organizers for inviting me to partake in this very important societal conversation. And I'm encouraged by the commitment that is displayed today by the South African Royal Princess Network to the unity of peace and development of the people of our country. This is indeed encouraging. And I know that the program states that I'll be speaking on behalf of national, but I would rather speak on behalf of what happens in our homes. We're very good at articulating the problem statement, at identifying what is wrong in our communities, but seldom do we focus on what can be done. It is indeed cause for concern that we live at a time when there's an increased risk of suffering, our children suffering from poor mental health. As we can see, the numbers are escalating on suicide, engaging in drugs and alcohol abuse, risky sexual behaviors, and contracting HIV at a very early age. And they also more at risk of behavioral problems such as aggression, delinquency, and poor social functioning. We see this in social media. I mean, people are comfortable in talking about how horrible Twitter is, and Twitter is just an app. It's the people that are engaging in these platforms. The question we then need to ask ourselves as adults, I know that there are programs, and thank you very much, Prof Nduna, for articulating what programs are available at national government and what sort of laws can we use to mitigate and correct what is wrong in our society. But I would like us to pay attention for a moment to what parents can do. You know, when all these ills are happening in our society, we need to ask ourselves as adults, where are the parents in all this happening to our children? The concept of gender-based violence means violence inflicted or suffered on the basis of gender differences. When I was born, my father was very disappointed that a girl child is born. And, you know, his disappointment was not just from verbalizing, articulating how disappointed he was, but he was quite abusive to my mom for having given birth to a girl child. And that was the beginning of many marital challenges that were experienced in my family. I was sexually violated by the next door neighbor's son, who was trusted in our community as the priest's son. You know, that at a time, and this is, we see it even today, that in my community at the time, there was no safety net for children to freely express themselves, especially about issues of sex and sexual violation, because sex was still deemed taboo. And in trying to put a stop to this abuse, I did not have a language for it. I knew something was wrong, and I knew I was uncomfortable with what was being done to me. I ended up running away to look for my mother, who had since left my father, and I ended up living in the streets. And both my parents were alive, and nobody pays attention to taking it back to the homes and getting parents to account, getting parents to be aware of the plight of children when they have differences. And you know, the preference of boy children over girl children is a social construct that is deeply embedded in our society, in our culture. And the following explanation of culture is taken out of the SC Alliance Gender Guidelines for Child Rights Programming, because oftentimes when we talk about gender-based violence, we focus on gender-based violence as though it's only girl children who are violated, and it's both. Boys and girls, I open quote, boys and girls learn culture and contribute to its continuity as well as its transformation. Social identities are manifestation of culture and are also gendered. They are forged through a number of social relationships in which girls and boys take part. They are also a result of a cultural meaning attached to children's status relative to adults and other boys and girls. Socialization ideas and practices are a key part of people's culture. And adult men and women use culture to explain or justify child rearing and socialization practices, even practices involving unequal treatment, close quote. And I'm sure the previous speakers clearly articulated, issues like ukuthwala, where people just came up with their own understanding of what the practice is and blame culture. The social contract of a boy child giving the man in the relationship a better status when the firstborn child is a male. And I'm hoping that through these conversations, we begin to unpack what is happening in our homes. It's quite easy for us to identify what is wrong, as I did indicate earlier. With our societal norms, very few commit to addressing the ills in their personal capacity in their homes. And through such conversations, I truly believe that child right programming will emanate using principles of child rights to plan, manage, implement, and monitor programs. That is not just from a what I know perspective, but rather just acknowledging that children also have human rights. And to address gender-based violence from a child right programming perspective, we should be focusing on addressing the root cause of violence and addressing unequal power structures between men and women, between women and girls, men and boys, and patriarchic structures and power relations between children and adults, putting children at the center, recognizing them as right holders and social actors, not just beings that are inexistent, giving priority to children, child-friendly environments. A young Criselda ran away believing that she could walk almost 350 kilometers to look for mom because there were no child-friendly environments where she could seek help and speak to an elder within the community to help her address what was uncomfortable at the time and did not have the language for it. Recognizing governments as primary duty bearers accountable to address and take action against gender-based violence. And I'm glad that Queen Ndamase clearly articulates that where are the programs in rural villages? Where are the programs for the poor? That we can't simply have these PowerPoint presentations, beautifully colored reports, yet there's no meaningful interventions that are felt on people's real lived experiences. And lastly, using participatory and empowering approaches, working in partnerships and alliances in alliance to promote the rights of the child, to address gender-based violence, and not from a place of just ticking boxes, but begin to recognize them as human rights. Talking about media, and we've seen in media how scary, scary stories about online risks for children. However, it's important to let potential problems, not let potential problems stop us from letting our children use technology. We are at a time now where we can't avoid this. We need to learn to use technology. I'll take you back to a story that made headlines globally, where a young girl connected online, thought this guy was into her. She's only 13 years old. Her name was Esetu. Esetu connected to this stranger who told her how beautiful she is and insisted that she sends him nudes. And unfortunately, her private parts were displayed throughout social media, and it's something that she will live with for the rest of her life. But it was important that there is a parent that reaches out and take the child by the hand, restore dignity to them, that they must know that having made a mistake and having recorded themselves does not begin to define who she is. But once again, I take this back to the parents. I take it back to the caregivers that, schools can never emphasize enough on parents' involvement in internet safety. And this is what we can teach our counterparts, that we don't ban children from utilizing technology because it scares us as parents. We live in a digital world, and that's not about to change. As we can see that right now we are in lockdown 4 as South Africa, and that means most of our children from tomorrow are going to be learning from home. And how do we do this if we are scared of utilizing technology? And take an interest in your child's online world. Most parents, I mean, are comfortable with having children logging on their own simply because you should understand that I don't know. It's not enough that you don't know. You have a responsibility to educate and teach yourself about social media. Talk to your children about the dangers of exposing themselves to strangers. Create family media agreements where you will write, have a contract with your child and get to understand who they're talking to. Make yourself part of every conversation that happens online with your child. And there is a YAPI concept that I'd like us all to be aware of. YAPI stands for, it's YAPPY. That stands for your full name, your address, your phone number, your password, your plans, and your birthday. This information, you must have it in hand as a parent, that it's not only accessible by strangers online, but as a parent, you must also have it. Keep the lines of communication open, that when there's a stranger that approaches your child, you must be the first one to know, and you must be the first one to help them to address the issue. And strive for balance in your home, where you recognize things that will endanger the life of your child. Then encourage your child to balance their screen time and green time. Green time would be that they take time of online interests. That would be your Twitter, your Facebook. They must take time out to focus on development. And part of that development is you as parents having conversations with your child. And be wary of health problems that come from overusing technology. Tell them about the eyesight. Tell them about the posture, that your back might end up being hurt. Tell them about the hearing problems and so on. There are just many challenges that arise from this. And how much time should children spend on screens? And this is a conversation that you need to have as a family, and be aware of age restrictions and explain to them why it's important, why is there an age restriction, why can't they access certain information, and most importantly, educate yourself and explore reliable resources that you share with your children on some of the sites that are X-rated that they must stay away from. Now, according to the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, it is a criminal offense to employ a child younger than 15, except in the performing arts, where perhaps your child could be, an actor or a singer, but that too, you need the consent of the adult. Why is it that to date we still have children working the fields and taking away from their growth potential? Through these conversations, I have faith that we are not just going to be ticking a box about this conversation, but we are committing to restoring our national pride in our children. And we want to impart to them the values of Ubuntu that we grew up with, and what it means to be a human being with integrity, being honest, not only to your circles and people around you, being a respectful human being, take national pride. We need to instill patriotism amongst our children, that they take pride in who they are. And I'm glad that this conversation is led by people who are custodians of our identity and national pride. And we want our children to grow appreciating the basis of African philosophy, which says umntu ngumntu ngabantu, and that as adults we must embody the African wisdom that it takes a village to raise a child. What kind of a village have we created? And these are sort of questions that we need to begin to ask, begin to respond to. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Kananda. I'd also like to thank everybody that's in the forum. Please bear in mind that we are watching the time. We will overrun, and we are very apologetic for that, but with the power and the content that we have here, I hope that we will wait until our last speaker. As you speak about parents, Dr. Kananda, Tsofatso Pule's body was found hanging from a tree in Roodepoort in June 2020. She was 8 months pregnant at that time. She was a parent that could not even communicate to her child because she was killed. We commit as the South African Royal Princess Network to get out there and make our children aware and educate ourselves with all gender-based issues, and then communicate it to our children so that our children are safe. Thank you so much. We will move to our next panelist. We will look at GBV in a global perspective, and we'll give this to Dr. Nomvuyo Nokwe. Thank you very much.
You, esteemed Royal Highnesses and our program director of CELS. Now, when it comes to presentations, and then you prepare and you prepare, and now I don't know, I'm just looking where I have put it. Okay, coming up. I think beginning, I will just say, am I on? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we
Yes,
can hear
yes,
you.
we can hear.
Okay, all right. For me, it's a great honor and a privilege today to be among such an esteemed Royal Highnesses, their excellencies, as well as the panelists that have come from a wide range of subjects and diverse situation. And I think for me, this then sets the tone of what is to come about. And I'm glad the previous speakers have alluded to a lot of points and facts that need to be followed up. And I hope we're taking note. And I feel that we are all placed to drive this important conversation, and also our respected leaders to take this baton by the hand and to drive the gender-based violence by creating awareness through an enabling environment, as well as the ultimatum goal of behavioral change in our communities. The gender-based violence needs to be eradicated so that daughters and sons to grow up in an environment that is a better world that is required, that where we grew up. I mean, a lot of us were fortunate to have that type of an environment. But today, we cannot speak about that. You cannot even trust your own father to take you along, or an uncle or anything, but this needs to change. Isn't it an irony that though South Africa has the best constitution and the best legal frameworks as it is to date, but gender-based violence is the highest in the world? And I feel so ashamed about it, because what have we done, or what are we doing? But I think this is the beginning. However, I believe that the Royal Highness Princess Network and the partnership with the likes of the His Excellency Andrew Williams and all the international role players here will lead the way and ensure that the narrative will be changed. To my topic, global gender-based violence in children occurs in every country in the world and across economic social groups. Sadly, 1 in 3 women and girls will experience sexual or physical violence in their lifetime. Gender-based violence is defined as acts of crime against girls, boys, women, and men that undermine the health, dignity, and security and autonomy of its victims. These acts are perpetrated physically, sexually, psychologically, and economically, and they seek to deny the victim from access to resources or services that may help it to lift the victim out of the cycle of violence. Gender-based violence has been ingrained in some societies and in some countries and regions of the world. And in many communities, violence against girls and women is expected and even accepted. For instance, I can cite a country like Guinea. It has 89% of girls and women between the ages of 15 to 24 believe that men beating their wives is justified under the least or one of the conditions. Global study reveals that the hidden impacts of the current COVID pandemic response measures, which are impacting negatively on children's health, nutrition, education, learning, protection, well-being, family finances, and poverty. For most marginalized and deprived children, the impacts have had the potential to be the altering, potentially, and devastating. Globally, more than 8 in 10 children felt that they were learning little or nothing at all. And 2/3 of parents and caregivers reported their child had received no contact from teachers since the schools closed. And we're going to be having that soon, I think, on Wednesday when our children schools close. 3/4 of households lost income as a result of COVID, and the vast majority of households, 96%, reported having trouble paying for an essential item or a service. 4 in 5 struggled to pay for food, and 2 in 5 households found it difficult to provide their families with nutritious diet. Most parents and caregivers, 89%, reported that their access to healthcare, medicine, or medical supplies had been affected. Now, in terms of looking at violence against girls, it includes sexual violence, child marriages, which I think the previous speakers had gone in a lot of extent, sexual harassment, female genital mutilation, intimate partner violence, and trafficking. Sexual exploitation and abuse, these impacts are significant in both short and long term and can include serious physical injuries, sexually transmitted infections such as HIV/AIDS, forced and unwanted pregnancies, and greater risk of maternity. Child marriage is a devastating marriage. Effectively, if it ends a girl's childhood, as we have heard, they are forced into these marriages. It robs them of education and more, replacing lessons learned in the classroom to adult responsibilities, including forced pregnancy, well before she's ready. This violates her rights, and it risks her life and lives of her children and the future of the community. Tragically, about 40 million girls worldwide are currently married to a union or without our help. An estimated 150 million girls will be married in the next decade. This is unacceptable. Despite efforts to end child marriage globally, an estimated 12 million girls are still married each year. West and Central Africa, home to 6 of the top 10 countries with the highest prevalence of child marriages in the world, with a prevalence rate of 41% in 2018. Now, in 2030, it is estimated over 150 million girls will marry before the ages of 18, despite global progress. Today, the poorest girls are 4 times more likely to marry in childhood than the richest. This year, Save the Children's Plan African Girls Report, published in October, it estimates that 600,000 girls in Africa could be newly at risk to child marriages because of COVID-19. Child marriage is often rationalized by traditional reasons across Africa. However, the practice is rooted in unequal gender and social norms, as well as discriminatory cultural traditions. This makes attaining the main objectives of Sustainable Development Goals 5, ending child marriages in all parts of the world, a complex task that requires cooperation from all stakeholders, mostly traditional leaders like yourselves. They are well placed to address the issue of child marriage because they influence social norms more than political leaders. Moreover, when political leaders change, their traditional structures remain from generations to generation. Another sexual gender-based violence is tragically, both girls and girls are vulnerable to being trafficked. However, girls are disproportionately targeted with most must deal with lifelong effects of gender inequality and gender-based violence. About 120 million girls worldwide, slightly more than 1 in 10, have experienced forced sex or other forced sexual acts, as we just heard from some of the speakers here today. Girls represent nearly 3 out of every 4 child trafficking victims, with the majority trafficked for purposes of sexual exploitation. Girls are twice are more likely to be reported as trafficking victims than boys. Often, girls around the world are forced to drop out of school or denied access to income generation opportunities. This results in a social exclusion, which can trap girls in a cycle of extreme poverty, as well as increase vulnerability to trafficking and exploitation. Girls tend to be trafficked for forced marriages and sexual slavery. Boys are typically exploited for forced labor. About 120 million, 120 million girls worldwide, slightly more than 1 in 10, have experienced forced sex or other forced sexual acts or some point in time in their lives. Now, besides the physical trauma of gender-based violence, there is this profound psychological impact. The effect is often worsened by family and community rejection. Girls and boys are frequently stigmatized in their communities when they are suspected of experiencing sexual violence. Now, I'm just coming to conclude. I thus believe the power of the traditional leaders gathered here today, like yourselves, can play a role in advancing the societal cause of fighting and protecting and empowering young girls. These things, so what basically what I'm saying is that if we want our girl child to go back to school, we need to start back in the communities, as has been alluded by the speakers here. So action must be taken with both the global and the national level to ensure that all countries are able to respond to this pandemic effectively and to build back better children in our societies. It will be important to familiarize ourselves with the UN Convention of Rights of the Child, which has been mentioned already. It is legally binding international agreement setting out the norms that has supposed to be aspired about. And therefore, if as government officials, as well as participating leadership in your communities, partner, especially now that you have partnered, especially with the likes of AHIABGA Foundation, so that our voices are heard out there. So therefore, government, donors, multilateral organizations, and all other stakeholders must take action to ensure that our children have access to strong, resilient, and equitable health and nutrition systems that continue to deliver routine services. They have access to learning whilst our school are able to return to school when it is safe. Inclusive and resilient social protection schemes, and I'm glad I just heard that there are certain communities already have started those type of things, are protected from violence and have access to child protection services, including gender-based violence and mental health services. I have listened and also have noted that a lot has been said, and therefore I would just then end my topic here, because then if anybody, we will then carry on, because I have also sent that presentation through to the organizers. But I thank all present here today, and also to thank the organizers for this outstanding webinar. And I hope this is not the end, but it's the beginning of things to come, as we can always take little bites out of this big topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. I would just like to make the panel aware of something that I read. Dr. Ntombizodwa was honored with Queen Majali Award during the 12th celebration of the annual Mpondo Culture and Heritage Festival, alongside her late father, the late liberation activist and first African advocate, Duma Noko, who received the King's Stella Bravery Award. That is great work. And I would also like to acknowledge the people that are on the chat. We have seen that you speak to the disabled community. Those are factors that we will have to consider. And we know that one chat talks about us having a voice as royal family, the royal family. We as the princesses will start that, and we will be the voice of the royal families. Then the male counterparts will follow us. So I would like to say thank you for that. Our next panelist is also an activist. He is a public speaker, a prolific writer on culture, development, economic and governance and political issues. Take it away, Your Highness Nkosi Phathekile Kholomisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. Fellow panelists, leadership of the South African Royal Princess Network, princesses and queens from across the kingdoms and principalities on which democratic South Africa is founded. Your Excellencies, notably Matwanini, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It gives me immense pride and joy to be part of a conversation of this nature, a conversation talking about how not to treat children, girls, and women. A conversation that should not, under normal circumstances, be taking place. A conversation that is spearheaded by the rightful leaders of South African young girls and women, the princesses and queens, daughters and wives of the country's traditional leaders, the kings and princes. I'm glad that you have come out of your not so comfort zone to take up your role as leaders in your own right by reason of the positions into which you were born. There's no reason to feel bad that you were not born, that you were born and not elected into your positions. Providence and your cultures placed you where you are for a reason. Be proud, therefore, of being the descendants of the original rulers of our land and people. As I said just now, we're gathered here in this historic webinar to talk about a subject which under normal circumstances should not even be arising. This is happening because we have become an abnormal society. We are free, yet unfree. President Oliver Tambo, that inestimable leader of the ANC, had the uncanny ability of stating the obvious in profound ways. He said, as long as women were not free, we could never claim to be free. This is an elementary truth. Women are the bedrock of every society. They are the mothers of any nation. Children are similarly the future of any society. It should be pleasing, therefore, for the eminent panelists with whom I have the honor today to share this platform, to take time to call out on the people of South Africa, to stop the scourge of an unwarranted assault on the mothers and daughters of the nation. We should all heed the call that gender-based violence is a societal matter that cuts across divides of race, culture, class, and religion. As a traditional leader, I'm familiar more with the values entrenched, yet distorted and abused in African cultures and traditions. I am ordained by the dictates of the cultural values of my father's people to interpret jurisdictionally and administratively how these are to be implemented. Our culture is about the nurturing, the defense and protection of the weak and the vulnerable. We do not have notions of, for instance, women being perpetual minors, as our colonizers came to tell us. Deliberately or out of ignorance, the colonial invaders, whose legacy we continue to endure, decreed that women were minors, that is African women. Yet no man of reason regarded himself to be so superior as to be a dictator in his own home. In this regard, for instance, a homestead is colloquially referred to as the homestead of Mrs. So-and-so. It is never referred to as Mr. So-and-so's place. So in these days, when men abuse and exploit women, babies and children. What does it mean to be a man? Being a man means to be none of the things that today's society is complaining about. To be a man is to be the provider to your family. It is to be the guardian and protector to all who fall within your family. It is to be not a monster, to be feared as it ravages its daughters and the vulnerable. To be a man is to respect and love your family. It is to make your house warm and embracing. It is to make family members to look forward to your coming back from your place of work where you toil for their benefit. To be a man means that when you have fallen for a woman with whom you want to have a relationship, you court her in order to impress her until he succumbs to your charms. If she rejects your advances, you don't force yourself upon her. And if all your efforts fail, well, you go next door. You don't rape the woman. Rape is so serious a crime in my culture that women are allowed to chase the rapist, catch him and beat him up, and proceed to punish him or his family by catching and slaughtering an ox belonging to his family. This they do by themselves. The customary law practice of ukuthwala has long been banned by the Congress of Traditional Leaders of South Africa. It is no longer necessary for a marriage relationship to be initiated through ukuthwala. Traditionally, ukuthwala, as has been explained before, especially by Queen Madosini, was a legitimate way of expediting the initiation of a marriage by obviating the drawn-out processes which involve a number of people in negotiations before it was concluded. The practice has since been abused by men who want to take advantage of the women from poor families, by mothers and aunts who want to make a quick buck by colluding with the prospective suitors in exchange for money, chickens, goats, sheep, or a cow or two. We have been reminded here again by Queen Madosini that in fact men also do collude in this dastardly practice. In such cases, the two parties might not even know each other, let alone being in love, which is an essential ingredient for any long-lasting marriage relationship. In a number of cases, some of the women are not even women in the true sense of the word, for they are still so young as to be not fit to bear children or deal with the wifely duties expected of newlyweds. Such men are criminals who deserve to be visited with the full might of the law. The involvement of female relatives, like mothers and aunts of such children, deserve to be similarly treated. They are in essence human traffickers who collude in the crime of rape. We need to remember that when you talk about the provision of lobolo, it does not mean you are buying the women as you would when, for instance, you buy a cow or a sheep or a car. She is not your property to do with as you please. She remains a human being with the same rights as any other person, male or female. She is of flesh and blood as the man, and when she is not in the mood, as someone said before, she must not be forced. Importantly, she is not a servant or a slave. She deserves respect. Now, our people should stop protecting rapists and women abusers by arranging for such acts of criminality to be settled through family negotiations in fear of the attendant embarrassment to the family name. The crime of rape is not a matter for settlement between the two affected families. It is a crime, for it is a crime perpetrated against vulnerable members who are not in a position to defend or protect themselves. Let me come to the matter of boys. When we initiate boys into manhood through the custom involving circumcision, we need to ensure that the men to serve as the surgeons, the attendants or nurses, amakangata, are men of integrity and of good morals. It should not be drunkards or men of unsavory character, men who know the purpose of the ritual. They must be. The mothers of the boys have the right to know from their husbands or the responsible male relative of the character of the men involved in the acts facilitating the transition of their sons into manhood. Drunkards, thieves, murderers, and rapists have no place in this space, for they are likely to impart their ill-conceived ways to the initiates. The objective here is to create men who will be of value to their families, communities, and the nation at large. The new men are meant to be humble, respectful, and productive members of society. There are too many issues we can talk about, time allowing, about what is unacceptable under cultural and social norms and values. Parents must always know where their children are. They must know who their boyfriends are. When we part today, let us be aware that there is no custom that has ever been conceived by our ancestors with the sole purpose of the exploitation and abuse of the vulnerable. Any distortion is a negation of the original intent. Gender-based violence is a profound and widespread problem in South Africa, impacting on almost every aspect of life. It is systemic and deeply entrenched in institutions of culture, religion, politics, and in general ways of life in South Africa. The Sexual Violence Research Initiative and the Joint Gender Fund have established this as a fact. Regrettably, GBF has become part of our daily vocabulary as a nation. It is an abiding shame that South Africa is globally ranked high among countries afflicted with the scourge. As a father of daughters, a husband, and as a leader in the community, this debate to me touches a raw nerve. Whilst as a nation and a member of the global community, we have to grapple with the invisible enemy that is the coronavirus pandemic. We find ourselves in the midst of a man-made national crisis and national emergency owing to a much more visible, audible, personal, and intimate enemy where our brothers, fathers, uncles, and even grandfathers visit untold violence on helpless women and children. What we are seized with is the gross violation of human rights that compels us to unite as a nation across political divides to restore the dignity of women. We need to do this in order to find effective solutions for the benefit of society, for the benefit of our people. GBV, as with all social ills, tears up the moral fabric of society with underlying factors that are at the genesis of what we now have to contend with. There's paucity of literature that would do justice in depicting the extent of the damage caused by the impact of colonialism and apartheid policies on indigenous South African communities. The notion of structural violence is invariably embedded in our violent political history, in which race, class, gender, and sexuality were normatively constructed. This is courtesy of the discriminatory laws that have manifested in institutionalized violence along racial lines over centuries. The law of the jungle mentality, survival of the fittest, has been fine-tuned and instilled in the psyche of society by the ruthless and vicious subjugation of African people by the apartheid system, the migrant labor system, the forced removal of people from their ancestral lands with the attendant destruction of the family structures are just some of the cases in point. The above mentioned processes resulted in the economic and cultural alienation of millions of South Africans. Consequently, the social and moral fabric of our communities, anchored on humility, communal fervor, and unity of purpose on Ubuntu, especially in rural areas, disintegrated, as has been said. This was displaced with self-centered, opportunistic, and inhumane behavior foreign to the culture of Ubuntu, that is the DNA of our people. Apartheid policies and associated migration patterns destabilized families. It has been suggested that when men could not maintain masculine superiority, they were more likely to use violence to exert their power. The apartheid machinery birthed and nurtured an animalistic and violent behavior that culminated in the GBV phenomenon. As the current government, it is our civic duty to reverse the scourge. Traditional communities in years gone by placed a premium on mutual respect for one another, and paramount was the ability to take care of and safeguard one another. Again, the idiom that says it takes a village to raise an African child embraces and validates the notion of a non-violent people exposed to foreign tendencies. The government of the day, willed by the majority of our people, is premised on an open, democratic, non-racial, non-sexist, and just society. I fully understand and embrace the wisdom of the human rights leader, Mahatma Gandhi, who famously said, the true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. Concrete decisions were taken by the government in order to begin a process to mitigate, if not eliminate, this dreadful scourge, albeit over time. Laws on domestic violence and sexual offenses have been passed by Parliament. Sexual offenses courts have now been set up to prioritize and expedite sexual offenses. The National Register of Gender-Based Violence Offenders is to be modernized to list all the men convicted of acts of violence against women and children. As government, we have embarked on legislative reforms by developing and finalizing a package of 3 important interrelated bills aimed at fighting the scourge of violence against women and children. They are the Criminal and Related Matters Bill, which is intended to address gender-based violence and offenses committed against vulnerable persons and to reduce their secondary victimization in court proceedings. Stricter bail and sentencing provisions are proposed to strengthen the legislative framework. Also have the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill and the Criminal Law Amendment Bill dealing with sexual offenses and related matters. In addition, fully support and embrace the calls for additional measures to be implemented immediately, declaring gender-based violence a national emergency and dedicating more time and resources to eradicate it, making the National Register for Sex Offenders public, tagging those convicted of sexual offenses. Correctional services, where I am employed currently, is at the receiving end of the criminal justice system, and therefore operationals and parolees that will ensure restorative justice succeed. This in turn will help to heal the wounds caused by GBV. We are hoping and enhance social cohesion. In conclusion, much like the education of our children and correctional services, GBV is a societal problem. It is therefore paramount that we do not mislead each other in our messaging on this very important matter. As men, we must take ownership and lead from the front in fighting the scourge of violence against women and children. It is important that we lead the process of educating and sensitizing boy children to respect the girl child. We must be active participants in changing perceptions that men, by virtue of their masculinity, are entitled to behave anyhow towards women and children. You must have noticed that the latter part of what I've been saying is an articulation of government policy. Now the question will arise, we see your policy, but how does the information relating to that policy come to the rural communities who are the primary victims of gender-based violence? What I can say in this regard is that in my traditional council, where I'm a traditional leader, I make it my responsibility to ensure that on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, whenever our traditional council meets, I invite government departments to come and explain to the community as to what it is that the government is doing in order to address our concerns and our issues and problems. We know that we hear over the radio, television, and in newspapers that certain amounts of money are allocated to a number of departments, in fact, all of them. And most of those in relation to addressing the problems facing women and children. And we call on them, therefore, to ensure that they explain to us and assist us in ensuring that we receive those resources that have been set aside. So that is what I would suggest, that the princes and princesses on this platform and elsewhere must ensure that they call on government departments, ministers, mayors, premiers, and MECs to come and talk to the people, not just before elections, especially after elections. And of course, even before elections, we can always invite them so that they explain to themselves as to what it is really that they are doing to address the plight of the most vulnerable of our people.
Thank you so much, Nkosi Phathekile. Siyabonga Baba. It is clear that there are strategies that are being done by our government, and we as royal families will take on the advice that you have told us to do. I think it's very important that amakhosi namakhosana wethu do, as you said, to invite more government departments and to speak about it. With every panelist that has spoken, they spoke about education awareness. That is very important. Thank you very much. We thank you for everybody that's in the webinar. We
Sorry,
have actually,
sorry, just before your closing remarks, Princess, apologies to everyone. We do have one speaker, Miss Jane Mufamadi. We've noted before the closing remarks. She's the CEO of Freedom Park. She'll be reflecting on GBV and youth activism, moral regeneration, and the role of Freedom Park in combating GBV. Thanks, Princess Mahlangu.
okay, thank you. Over to you, to her. Thank you very much, Princess Stella.
Thank you so much. And I would like to recognize all protocols. And I want to say that it's really great to be amongst such royalty. I think I feel blessed. We are having this webinar in the year of Charlotte Maxeke, our mother of Black freedom, who is really one woman who is a pioneer and who was passionate about issues of inclusivity, which I believe are relevant to the discussion we're talking about today, who was also passionate about education and also obviously issues around evangelism. We know that Mama Maxeke was passionate about the plight of women. Hence, in Umteteleli Wabantu, she addressed the women question. And I listened to many speakers, particularly in terms of GBV, regarding women, obviously, and young people, children as well. And I just want to say that it is really tragic that South Africa is one of the highest, one country with the highest rates of GBV in the world. And we are told that ours is actually 5 times higher than the global average. And really that is an indictment to all of us, because within this context, we know that also, as alluded to again, during the lockdown, we understand that the numbers grew to a very high proportion, but we cannot just solely blame the lockdown, because we know that even before the lockdown, these numbers were already high, and this is a scourge and a stain in the fabric of our society that we really need to address and take seriously. And of specific concern is also the fact that the children in South Africa and young people are really faced with violence on a daily basis. Some researchers will tell you that 42% of children had experienced some form of maltreatment, while about 82% have experienced some form of victimization, whether it's criminal victimization, whether it's neglect, and also sexual violence. And one wonders, what kind of a society are we breeding as a community, as a nation? Because if 82% of our children are exposed to such violence, what legacy are we leaving? What kind of adults and parents are they going to become themselves? Because they're learning from us and they think this is part of life. What is it that we need to do to address these challenges? The other risk that probably is of concern, many speakers spoke about the values of Ubuntu. I am because you are, but also in our African tradition where we know that your child is my child. And we learn that also a lot of the violence is meted against those children who do not have parents and or in the child-headed families, while we know that it also happens within children who have both parents as well. But the question and the challenge that we need to pose to ourselves is that what is it that we are doing when we pass and when we have a neighbor which is a household that is child-headed? What is it that we are doing as a community, as a nation as well? Some speakers also spoke about the issues of child trafficking, issues around ukuthwala, where we understand that at least 91,000 girls are kidnapped, if I can use that term, almost on an annual basis. These numbers are shocking. Children between 12 to 17 years being married as well in that manner. That again is really an indictment. And I think what we probably need to also look at is the issues of children being forced, for example, to embark on sexual practices so that they can survive, because there's no other means for them to survive. They want to obtain food, shelter, education, and clothing. And the elders are abusing them to say, I will give you money for school, I will give you money for food if you sleep with me. I think those are some of the challenges that shows that we are a sick nation, a sick society, and we need to address these challenges. Some of the issues I'll just skip in the sense that many speakers had already raised, and I don't want to repeat because I know we have run out of time. The other challenge that I just wanted to indicate is that the issues around legislation, the issues around the laws, and we know that in 2018 we were commemorating 20 years of the Domestic Violence Act. However, we know that the implementation in terms of the environment, it's still again a challenge in terms of, while we have these laws that also Nkosi Holomisa raised, is there a will in the implementation to make sure that the perpetrators are brought to book? But are those who are responsible for bringing the perpetrators to book, understanding their role and the mandate, are they willing to do that? And or are they perpetuating either due to their own prejudices and perceptions? So those are some of the issues that I also thought we should also reflect on, in the sense that this becomes our own responsibility as a collective and as a nation. We know that most of the victims do not want to report these cases, do not want to speak about this because of the pressure that we as a society put on them. Firstly, within our families, you cannot embarrass the family like that. If this goes out, what will people think about us as a family? Or the fear that it is my word against his. No one will believe me. But also being told that your behavior caused the abuse. You invited the abuse that was meted to you. And or the fear that if this person is arrested, who's going to support me and the family? And therefore, due to those reasons, most of the victims, being children, being also women, and also spouses within families, we are then perpetuating that culture of silence, that we can't talk about it. There is other impact. There are other issues that you need to look at before you report and or before you act against such violence, which I think we really need to look at. And again, I spoke about the inadequate response in terms of the service providers, where the victims feel victimized, they feel stigmatized and aggrieved in terms of the attitude. Many people have spoken about the ignorance and the negligence at police station when they report these cases. But I think we also need to look at on the flip side to say, are our police services well trained and equipped to deal with these issues, or are they also part of that promotion of the perception that you asked for it or you are to blame? What did you do for you to be victimized? Where were you going when you were traveling in the evening? What kind of clothes were you wearing when you were abused? Such issues, I think we need to look at the training and capacitation of those who are charged with the responsibility to ensure that there is justice against such abuses. As a nation, we have a rich history, particularly our young people, of overcoming many political and social struggles. And the example of the apartheid, which young people fought strongly until we attained our freedom, if we are to look at the young people of 1976. I do believe that the current cadre of young people and youth needs to mount an equally impactful struggle against this scourge, because the future is theirs. And yes, all of us need to hold hands to fight this. But if we look at heroes and heroines like Charlotte Maxeke, who were able to break a lot of barriers. If you look at what she was able to achieve as a woman, breaking the barriers and venturing into territories where was the exclusive territory of the male-dominated society. She broke that, and I think we can take a cue, and also we can inspire our young people to say, there are those who stood up, fought and won this fight, and draw inspiration to do that. But I think the other aspect that I just want to indicate is to say, we need to realize that we can talk, we can blame police, we can blame the government for inaction. But if we are really serious about defeating this scourge, we need to take personal and collective responsibility. As individuals, it is my responsibility to stand up and take a stand. As families, we need to stand up. As communities and as a nation at large, it is our personal collective responsibility to make sure that we fight this scourge. We can blame, and we understand there's a lot of challenges in terms of resources, in terms of support, but if individually we stand up, collectively we support each other, and we can make a difference. You can save one child from being abused. You can save one woman from being abused, and you would have done your part. And that ripple effect will make a greater impact in our community and our society, so that we don't necessarily point fingers, we stand up and we take action. And I think the other aspect that I just want to say we need to reflect on is the issue of intervening directly to our boys, our young men, within the communities and also within schools, to address the risks, to also empower and educate them. And I'm happy that I saw in the chat box that there are organizations also that are beginning to focus on the boy child. And I just want to say also, here at Freedom Park, we have started developing programs that looks at empowering the boy child, because this is a social interaction. And as much as we want to empower girls to be confident, to stand up for themselves, we must understand that these girls are going to interact with the boys who, if not educated enough, will not be aware and will not meet these young girls halfway. So we need to have a holistic program that address the society as a whole. And also, I think the other aspect that I need to raise, and I'm glad that it was already raised by also the Queen and also Inkosi Holomisa, the acknowledgement and realization that the majority of our rural communities are under the leadership of our traditional leaders. And I think we can use the institution of traditional leadership to address this gap, to build communities with zero tolerance gender-based violence, irrespective of who commit this atrocity. It can be a respected member of the society, but if we're protecting them because of their stature and standing in society, then we would have failed the future generations. And I think the other aspect that I want to raise is the fact that many people tend to blame and use culture as a scapegoat. And I think the example of ukuthwala was well articulated. But while we understand that our cultures are dynamic and not static, and if there are instances of cultural practices that are oppressive and perpetuate the violence, there is nothing wrong with changing, because that is actually part of culture. Culture is dynamic, it grows, it changes with the context. That is one aspect. However, the other aspect that we need to address, and probably which is a challenge to this network of princesses, is that what is it that we are doing to allay the distortions that are out there in the name of cultures? For people who don't understand culture, or who understand culture but who deliberately abuse people in the name of cultures, I think we need to start developing programs that educate our nation about the cultural and correct cultural practices. And I think Queen and Nkosi Holomisa clearly articulated that what is happening these days in the name of ukuthwala is not what our culture is all about. And therefore, those who are abusing these cultural practices must take a responsibility. They must face some form of consequences. But if some of these cultural practices are well articulated, the distortions are corrected in our writings and in different training programs and sessions that we do, I think people will begin to understand culture for what it is, and to a point that we can actually use cultural practices to address the scourge of gender-based violence, because there are processes and systems within our cultures that were placed specifically to address such issues, be it in the marriages, whether somebody has paid lobola or not. We know that culturally, when you have paid lobola, you don't own and you have not bought the woman. And actually, if you abuse your woman, you are disrespecting your parents. At least that is what happens in my culture, in the Venda culture, that you are not allowed to abuse your wife, because your wife is literally your mother's mother or your father's mother. Therefore, when you abuse your wife, you are abusing your own parents, and therefore action will be taken. So there are values, positive values that we can utilize to address the scourge of gender-based violence. And I do believe, as I said, there is a lot that we can do. It takes a village to raise a child, as the speakers before me have indicated. But I think coming together collectively and taking personal responsibility will begin to make an impact and inroads into addressing this scourge. I just want to humbly thank the South African Royal Princesses Network on inviting me to also share my thoughts, and to say, as Freedom Park, as a custodian of culture and heritage, we really support the initiatives, and we really believe that there is a value that we can derive from our culture, from our heritage, which the current nation and generation seriously and is in dire need, which can change the role that our society has become in terms of such challenges. I believe we do have solutions, and we can learn from those who came before us. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jane Mufumadi. You packed it, and I'm not going to unpack it. Thank you so much. We do have participants in the webinar. So before we close it, because we know that we have a second webinar that is going to take place from 6:30. So I'd just like to go back to the participants. Prince William and Princess Tsepi, please help me. By means of hands, I'm going to take two participants to say something. Please don't be long. And then please also just maybe let's take two questions from the chats. Then I'll give it to Princess Tsepi to close it. Thank you very much. Please help me. You're welcome, participants. Just raise your hands, and Princess Tsepi will help me with Prince William.
Good afternoon, Princess. My gadget doesn't allow me to raise my hand. Can you recognize me?
Noted,
Yes.
you may go ahead.
And please, if you can share your video, that will be helpful.
Good afternoon to everybody, all the panelists, including Nkosi Olomisa, all the princesses. Mine is just really, I'm Nkosikazi Mhlauli, the Deputy Chairperson of the National House of Traditional Leaders, who is a mother, who is Nkosi. I'm really humbled to be part of this webinar because I know when they started, when they were about to start this organization, Princess Stella, the junior or the second, consulted with me, not as just an aunt, but as a mother. She wanted to get an advice before they started. That is what I really appreciated as a mother. And I just said, go on, my daughter, please. And I even assisted her to give her the contacts of other princesses. I'm here just to support you from the National House of Traditional Leaders. As I've already indicated in my chat start, we have got a lot of programs. We are going to work with you. As you have indicated that you have already started. So we are going to work, to join hands with you, with Princess Gabo, who is part of the National House of Traditional Leaders. So we are here and we are going to fight this gender-based violence and femicide. I'm also happy that the Queen Madosini is here, is part of these discussions. Also as a mother, sometimes, Nkosi Olomisa, when it was myself who was going to speak, as I'm a little bit older than the Queen, I was going to find another way of saying other things as an elderly person, but the Queen is just talking as a queen, and the Queen who is younger, who is able to articulate the way they would like to speak as the young generation. So we are here just to support you. I won't ask questions because I'm not here to ask questions. I'm here to support you. All the best princesses. But I know a program director that when they were starting this organization, there were questions from their brothers, some of their brothers, thinking that they are going to discuss about the issues of our throne and other things. As it is happening with us as women, when we have got our meetings, Amadoda will start asking, what are they going to discuss? It's still going to be the same with them, but now they won't ask any questions if you come up with your programs, as you already stated. Thank you very much. All the best, my daughters.
Thank you, Nkosi Mhaule. Thank you very much. Do we have any hands, Prince William?
Yes.
Go ahead, Princess. I have 60 participants.
Sorry.
I'm a bit challenged.
Sorry. All right. I think perhaps just to update everybody, the way you raise the hand, I know Sinoyolo did raise the hand. I saw something to that effect. So before we take you, the way you raise the hand, it would be on the reactions. On the reactions, when you click the reactions, where it says reactions, there's a head, and then it shows you. That's where you can click on raising hand, and we are able to see you. Thank you very much.
HRM Queen. That's all I can read. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mine is very short. It's just to thank the princesses for this.
Could you share your video, please? We are streaming it, so it'd be helpful for us to see who you are, if at all possible.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mine is very short. Is to thank the princesses for this initiative of the Royal Princess Network, which I believe we will work in interlinking ways, or rather we will use that theorem of congruency going forward. We will not work in silos within the traditional sphere. We were very excited when our sisters formed this network, this organization. We said, yes, we are getting somewhere now because we need that voice. We need that young voice. We need that convincing voice in this patriarchal institution that is full of norms and values that still needs to be addressed so that women are free and young women are free. And I think I don't have any questions or anything, but contribution has given us hope, has given us that we are getting somewhere. Thank you very much. It was an honor to be part of this dialogue, and we say phambili to the princesses. We know that we'll work well together and you are welcome to join us. Thank you very much.
Before you leave, please say clearly your name so that our audience will know who you are. And in the chat, if you choose, please present your contact information. Thank you.
Thank you, Prince William. Do we have anything from the chat? Do you have a question from the chat?
We have
one question.
Yes, Coley has a hand raised. Coley, please unmute.
Good afternoon. Oh, okay, Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Coley Butelezi. I'm the national coordinator of Sisonke, the national sex worker movement in South Africa. I'm pleased to be part of this platform and also to participate. Thanking all the princesses and everyone in the space and the Inkosi to have this kind of platform to discuss the issues and the challenges that we are facing in the country. I must say that within the movement, we do come across issues of young women that are exploited in the industry. And for me, it was an honor to participating in this space because we sometimes are struggling because the age restrictions that we work with, it's 18 and above. But I think under the criminalization of sex work in South Africa, it's very difficult for us to fight the underage. So I'm pleased to be part of the space and also contribute how best maybe we can prevent the gender-based violence, because some underage women are actually hooked by seeing the fancy lifestyles from other people and their neighbors, failing to understand that within our families we are not the same, and financially also we are not the same. I think what I would appreciate in this platform, if it were to be discussed or to create maybe some sort of system whereby when we're reporting the issue of the underage and also the GBV that is escalating, because women these days are facing a lot of gender-based violence. Like like when I go to work or when I'm home, I've got a younger sister. I always feel when she go for say classes, and I try to make sure that I escort her. And sometimes I feel like I'm too much protective, but I think it is due to things that I've seen with my own eyes, things that I've witnessed, things that I've read on news and articles. But and sometimes I question myself, if am I going to be alive tomorrow? And I'm hoping that next platform of this meeting, I question myself again, that will I be still alive, you know, to push the advocacy work. So I'm very much honored to be surrounded by the platform of the princesses to discuss these issues. I recognize this is Criselda. You once interviewed me one time when we were about to do the march advocating for the rights of sex workers in South Africa, because regardless of what they do, they are still human beings. So I'm available from the National Sisonke Movement, and as a head of the founding member of the organization, if there are any issues that need to be discussed that are related to underage, because we struggle in South Africa to report some of the challenges that we have come across, and especially on the organizations that work with underage to address the issues that young women are facing. I think also the importance of looking at the root cause so that we can be able to address the problem. Thank you so much.
We do thank you, and again, if you'd be so kind as to in the chat include your contact information if you choose. I'll turn it back over to you, Princess. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am going to take the decision to say that we need to close this because we have a second webinar. So in order for us to prepare for that webinar, we will take all the chats, and for the next panelist, they will look at the questions that have been mentioned in the chat, and then we shall then answer them and then also give response to that. Before I give it to Princess Tsepi. Prince William?
Yes, Professor Thule has a hand raised, and just to let you know, after you complete this presentation, I'll stop recording, but I'll keep open this room so that if there's continuing discussions, it can continue. Thank you.
All right, Professor Thule, I'm gonna give it to you, but I won't come back. After Professor Thule, Princess Tsepi, will you please give us the closing remarks? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Royal Highnesses. Just 1 minute of your time. Firstly, to congratulate you on initiating this platform. That is leadership. And thank you for the privilege from Sawit and from yourselves to be able to witness this very insightful conversation. I take the floor because I would like to invite you, dear colleagues, including Dr. Criselda, for us to include the element of mental health. I know we're all angry about GBV and what is being done to women. I'm increasingly realizing that at the core of a lot of it is mental health challenges, and data that is coming from various parts of this world during COVID-19 is confirming that mental health is often at the core of violence generally, including gender-based violence. So I'm just standing to say, please, let's talk further about what can we do together to intervene to promote mental health. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Thule. If you could, again, insert your contact information in the chat. All are asked to save the chat. Instructions are in the chat. I'll turn it back over to Princess Tsepi. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to everybody. I would like to greet you all on behalf of our organizing team and our visionaries as the South African Princesses Network. I greet His Royal Highness Kgosi Holomisa. I would also like to greet our princesses, our princes, all esteemed guests, professors, ambassadors, and I greet all ladies and gentlemen. What a wonderful afternoon we have had. What a wonderful conversations we all have engaged into. And I would just like to perhaps echo everybody's views in saying this has been long awaited. I'm so happy that the traditional community has taken up charge and said we are going to stand up and say, not in the name of tradition and not in the name of culture. Allow me to thank all our phenomenal speakers that have been bold enough and courageous enough to really approach this theme and the topic with such directness in addressing their topics under our theme of today. I would like to assure everybody who perhaps has been having a question in mind to say, will this just be a once-off or just to tick a box? To say that from the desk of our organization, visions and all of ourselves as the Princesses Network, this is to be ongoing. And we are also inviting all the stakeholders, all the like-minded, all people that want to see this, this country at a better place in terms of women, children, and all the minority groups or people that we sometimes call them the vulnerable people. And all our contributions from these sessions will help us as the network in charting way forward and coming up with concrete plans that will ensure that we incorporate all stakeholders. Mindful at this juncture, because we are still also looking forward to the next session, that we cannot now be summing up and coming up with the way forward. So therefore we will be incorporating this and going back to our desks and going back to discuss as to taking what we have seen, the suggestions, the views, and all the presentations that have taken place. there will definitely be a lot of the list that is going to be formed from us as the network that is going to be charting the way forward. For now, allow me just to say thank you to everyone who has made this day such a success, to everyone who has taken their time to be with us here. We recognize all countries globally. We know that in Africa, we have Nigeria, we have Kenya here, we have South Africa, all 9 provinces of South Africa are represented. We have all stakeholders, we have people that we are going to be carrying the business sphere. We see you, we recognize you, and we are so highly appreciating you. On behalf of Princess Stella and the network, on behalf of Princess Gabo and all our stakeholders, all our networks, all the members of the network, we would like to say, Kyalebuha, Siyabonga, Enkosi, Asante Sana. Thank you so much. Enkosi, thank you.
Enkosi Makhosazana.
Enkosi Makhosazana. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The room will remain open for those that would like to come back.
Thank you.
Just a moment, please.
Thank you.
I'd like to close on behalf of not only our host, the South African Princess Network, but it would be necessary for me to be the ones to also thank our sponsors. That includes the EdFu Foundation, edfufoundation.org, the 5 Points Youth Foundation, of which I'm the president, and of course, Future Lift, which is headed by Princess Seppi. We have additional sponsors and supporters, the Revelation Network, TRN.TV, Universal Citizens Media Network, the Nakori TV, and we also have the Cycle of Success and the Solo Collective here in Los Angeles. So I'm going to now stop sharing this and introduce you to our next group of people on the second webinar, if I can get my hands on it. So upcoming, we'll have, in just a few moments from now, a second group of panelists, and we look forward to inviting you all to attend. With that, I'm going to end the recording now, and then I'll leave the room open. And I want to thank all of our royalty for enabling us to reach the world. Oh, by the way, here's a closing shot of the participants to date that are here. If you'd like to share your video, we can all wave goodbye, people. I'm going to end this recording in 30 seconds, 15 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds,